Welcome to Protecting the Planet. I'm Ben Tracy. Energy powers our lives. It's necessary for lighting our homes, cooking our food, traveling, entertainment, and so much more. But burning fossil fuels for energy is the leading cause of the greenhouse gases that are warming our planet. And 68% of all the energy produced in the U.S. is wasted. That's according to the World Economic Forum. So let's focus on the challenges, innovations, and partnerships in making renewable clean energy more widespread. We visit a solar farm doubling as a field where hungry sheep graze. And we take a trip to an Arctic community where coal mines in operation for 100 years are being replaced with solar panels. But we begin at the California Institute of Technology, where scientists are exploring ways to harness the sun's energy to power life here on Earth. Here's Jeff Glore.
Oh my God.
Gosh, we got it, guys. Yeah.
This video captures a moment some have compared to Alexander Graham Bell's first telephone call.
There we go.
A microwave beam of energy sent directly from a satellite in space and received on Earth by scientists from Caltech. Ali Hajimiri co-led the team that did it.
It was a little bit unreal initially, and then it took us a little bit of time for it to sink in.
Solar power currently provides about 3 to 4% of the world's energy needs. But it only works during the day or when there are no clouds. In space, the sun always shines. The challenge has always been how to capture enough of it and get it back to Earth.
Let's try this. Can you turn the power off and then turn it back on? I'm going to keep it in the same place.
Hajimiri has been developing the technology to do this at his Caltech lab for decades. And while that is the future, at Guru, the company he co-founded, he showed us how beams using currently available energy can power basic household devices right now, using that same technology. So there's like a beam of energy right now.
Yes, exactly. And sending it specifically here, nowhere else.
To this location.
Yeah. It's just like standing in front of let's say, a heat lamp.
Yeah.
So that's basically the kind of energy it's sending.
At this station, these lights get their power from a transmitter overhead. The direction of its signal is controlled by a joystick. Whoa, that's hot.
While you're standing right in front of it.
I feel my power growing right now. The same power source works on other devices. There's no battery in this drone.
No.
There's no other power source. It's
No.
being charged from up here.
Yeah, correct.
The largest construction project that's ever been done in space is 357 feet, International Space Station. You're talking about something that's a kilometer.
Right, exactly. So this is a much larger structure. But
how the heck do you do that?
So making it different.
Different is why Hajimiri and his colleague at Caltech, Sergio Pellegrino, have a plan to build a gigantic series of what some have described as flying carpets, which would soak up energy and send it back to Earth.
Oh my God, it's going. That's it. Wow.
The first step in that process took place when the team sent a satellite into space with a prototype of one of these flying carpets, also called modules.
So these modules, we envisage them being tens of meters in size, and we are focusing on an objective of 60 meters. So that square would scale up by a factor of 30.
This is going to be a football field in space.
That will be.
And you're talking about hundreds of football fields.
Hundreds of football fields, but all so lightweight that they will just be doing their dance.
Being lightweight and compact reduces the fuel needed to launch into space, which is crucial if they're going to compete with the cost of other energy sources. This is what we're talking about.
Yeah.
It seems very flimsy.
It's very flimsy, and if you flatten it here, see, it becomes even flimsier. I can fold it.
You think it's going to hold up in space?
Absolutely.
When you're talking about sending this amount of energy, I guess people would ask, is it dangerous?
Right, that's a good question, and we've been looking at it from different perspectives. The good thing is that the wavelengths, the frequencies we are using, are the so-called non-ionizing ones, which basically means that they don't create chemical change. But on top of that, this system has various levels of control and safety, so we keep the power density at maximum much lower than what you get from the sun.
Solar power beamed down from satellites in space has the potential to not only harvest 8 times more energy than land-based solar, but open new avenues of power to people who've never had it before.
What kind of timetable do you think you're looking at?
I think we are looking for commercially available power from space. We are looking at a decade or two.
When a single-use battery ends up in a landfill, it can release toxins that can pollute the soil and the groundwater around it. But what if there was one that lasted so long, some scientists consider it a forever battery? Here's Sarah Donchie from KPIX, our CBS station in San Francisco.
Jörg Heinemann is on his way to work, a 2.5-hour trek to Fremont.
This is one of my favorite trails here.
He is stoked. Some might say the avid cyclist is his own source of renewable energy.
Yeah, there you go, exactly. It's a lot of fun. It's been a passion for a long, long time.
His other big passion? Finding a new way to store renewable energy. It's a game-changing technology made at this Bay Area factory.
It's basically the do-everything battery.
Jörg is CEO of EnerVenue, headquartered in Fremont. The Bay Area startup aims to revolutionize the electrical energy sector by accelerating how wind and solar energy are stored. The company's battery is the secret ingredient.
Our battery, unlike lithium-ion, unlike everything else, effectively lasts forever.
These batteries use nickel hydrogen. The technology's been around for nearly 50 years, primarily in the space industry, storing solar energy to power everything from satellites to the Hubble telescope, as well as the International Space Station. But using the technology on a large-scale project back on Earth posed a costly problem. A critical component is made of platinum.
Crazy expensive.
A few years ago, the founder of EnerVenue took a fresh look at the technology and discovered a clever way to make these batteries dramatically cheaper.
And that took this crazy good performing energy storage technology and made it affordable.
And while nickel is mined, it's abundantly found on Earth. The batteries contain such a tiny amount of hydrogen.
It's very light, it escapes very fast before anything damaging can happen.
Even when thrown on a fire.
That pressure actually forces the hydrogen to recombine with water inside the battery. Battery continues to heat, it'll reach a predefined temperature, at which point there's a seal that gives way, and the battery vents steam at that point.
The company says there is no need for extra air conditioning or a fire suppression system.
You need venting, that's it. Venting meaning if something were to happen so that the gas could escape on its own and exit the structure.
As to what is meant by lasting forever,
it has a cycle life of 30,000 cycles. That would mean charging the battery and discharging it again 3 times a day for 30 years. In practical terms, that's a forever battery.
The batteries are stationary and can be mounted in racks, stacked, or stored in containers. They could be used on the grid, in a business, or one day even in your home, as seen on this prototype.
And our battery can be placed underneath the floor in the crawl space of a home or in an attic. Anywhere that's ventilated, where there's dead space, we can go.
As for Jörg,
if I'm on my bike, it's where I have my best ideas.
For years, he was looking for a battery that could compete with lithium ion. He now believes he's on the path to success.
Coming up, we meet some furry friends making solar energy even greener. There are now more than 5,000 solar farms across the country, and a new practice called solar grazing is helping to maintain the fields around the panels. Dana Jacobson met the 4-legged workers, keeping the surrounding vegetation in check.
You ready, Reg? Oh, wait a minute.
It is a border collie's dream come true. 6 acres of land, calling for Reggie to do what she was born to do.
Good girl, Ida. Get up, Reg. Get up, up.
Herding a flock of 32 sheep under the watchful eye of her owner,
Good girl, good girl. Hi, sheep.
Dan Finnegan.
One well-trained border collie like Reggie is worth 5 full-time employees.
Wow.
Between the sheep and the dog, I'm just a driver. Here we go.
Dan is more than just a driver. He's a third-generation sheep farmer in southeastern Massachusetts. And while this isn't his family farm, it is Dan, Reggie, and the flock's office for the day. Together, they make up Solar Shepherd, working with large energy companies across the U.S. using the sheep to graze sites like this one, which host solar arrays. In Dan's words, they're in the lambscaping business.
Did people think you were crazy or
At
not?
the very beginning, the conversations were centered around you'd like to do what on our solar array?
Yeah.
Now that's not so much the case.
Why do you think it's been embraced so easily now, or at least so well now?
Well, first and foremost, the sheep do a great job.
Excellent workers.
They're wonderful workers. They do a great job of managing the vegetation on the solar array. They fit underneath the solar panels. The old-fashioned way of managing these sites would be to come in with a crew of 5 or 8 guys on zero-turn mowers with the bulk of their time spent running weed whackers underneath the solar panels to get all that vegetation that grows under there. You know, a site like this, you'd probably send an 8-man crew for 3 days each time they mow it, at least 3 or 4 times a year.
Time and money.
Time and money.
There's also the environmental impact. According to a recent study, if all sheep in the U.S. were shifted to agri-solar farms, the reduction in carbon emissions would be the same as removing 117,000 cars from the road. This field, which Solar Shepherd grazes, is one of 30 owned and operated by National Grid, responsible for providing power to more than 20 million customers in the Northeast.
This brings energy into the grid.
Steve Werner is the president for National Grid New England.
What was it about agri-solar that attracted National Grid?
It's an interesting solution to a problem that we have, right? So we installed large-scale solar for residents of Massachusetts. We need to maintain the vegetation, the grass that grows on those properties. We came across this idea and said, hey, this is a win-win. It's cost-effective, it's environmentally responsible, it's friendly to the neighbors, and this is just another example of how an area that was an agricultural use still can be, and also be a generator.
Those stacked benefits from solar grazing, especially when it comes to the environment, are exceeding expectations, according to Stacy Peterson.
You know, we're seeing sometimes a 3-fold increase in pollinators. We're seeing 3 times the amount of birds and bees, bats, butterflies.
She's the energy program director at NCAT's Agri-Solar Clearinghouse, a government-funded information hub for all things agri-solar.
How much has this industry grown in the last 5 to 10 years?
So much. This is taking off all across the country and all across the world, really. We're there to help you figure out what's best for your area and connect you with the right people that might help you do this if you want this at your farm or if you want this in your community.
Without this solar operation and the added pasture it brings us, we wouldn't have a sustainable farm. We need this. And I think there are a lot of other farmers in that same boat. When you think about how many animals you need to produce a living, particularly in the Northeast here, it takes a lot of acreage to do that. So the 100 acres of solar pasture we have under management, that makes our farm sustainable. If we didn't have that, we wouldn't be able to continue. So we're producing food, fiber, and energy all from the same acre of land. It's a smarter way to use this land.
When we come back, an Arctic coal community goes solar. In Svalbard, Norway, a community near the Arctic Circle, coal has been king for a century. Now the last coal mine has been closed and they're switching to solar panels. Solar and wind energy is possible in the Arctic despite the frigid conditions, but finding the best equipment in this part of the world can be challenging. David Schechter went north to learn more.
Just about everywhere you go in Svalbard, it's a tradition to take off your shoes. It helps keep the inside spaces clean.
It's kind of a nice tradition, actually.
It's also a tradition because Longyearbyen has been a coal mining community for the last 100 years, and coal is a dirty business. Burning coal warms the planet, contributing to the very problem this community now faces. But not for much longer. Svalbard's last coal mine is closing by order of the Norwegian government. And the people here have ambitious plans to transition to renewable energy while helping 1,500 other Arctic communities do that too, including in Alaska.
Most of them are getting their energy from fossil fuels these days, so we have a large potential.
Heidi Teresa Ose is the CEO of the local mining company leading that transition away from coal. We met in one of the company's old mines.
Your job is to take this company in a new direction, huh?
Yeah, it is. It is a huge challenge, right? To try and transform the energy production in the whole Arctic from fossil to renewable.
Sounds like a great idea, but Heidi's telling me the reliability of solar and wind power in the Arctic is still an unknown.
We don't have a lot of experience of how it can handle the rough climate and weather conditions that we have up here. So we have a job to verify the technology in the Arctic climate.
In an even more remote part of Svalbard is the northernmost solar park in the world. It's getting great results in summer when the sun shines 24 hours a day, but surprisingly also in spring. It turns out solar panels can capture light from the sun and light that reflects off the snow. And when there's too much power, it can be stored for several hours in industrial batteries like these. In the United States, we're on a similar path. Since 2019, we now get more of our energy from renewable sources than we do from coal. In Svalbard, they've stopped burning coal altogether. The world's northernmost coal-fired power plant switched to diesel fuel, which is cleaner, but the intention is to add in renewable energy as those technologies are proven reliable in the Arctic.
With little space in the northeast United States for large solar farms, offshore wind farms could be the best hope for renewable energy along the East Coast. But the industry is facing tough headwinds, as the economy is making some projects just too expensive to build. I recently visited one of the newest offshore wind farms in the country. When you see this thing spinning here, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, this is the future.
It's also historic. This 800-foot-tall wind turbine is part of the first large-scale offshore wind farm to ever deliver power in the U.S. This is actually generating power for New York right now.
Yes, it is. Power from the first turbine has come to the grid.
Jennifer Garvey works for Ørsted, the Danish wind power giant that is building this installation 35 miles off the coast of Long Island. Once complete, it will have 12 turbines, each 2.5 times taller than the Statue of Liberty.
You've got some of the best winds in the world here.
Ørsted America's CEO David Hardy showed us this beach where power from those turbines comes ashore near the Tony village of East Hampton. Earlier this year, the company threaded an undersea cable deep below the sand and down this road to connect to the grid. So this is basically a massive extension cord?
Yeah, you could call it that, a 78-mile extension cord.
And this town, with an obvious affinity for windmills, is now partially powered by 132 megawatts of the real deal.
For those that don't speak energy, that's 70,000 homes. This is a first, this is a milestone.
It was supposed to be the first of about 24 offshore wind farms built by developers along the East Coast, a key part of the transition away from fossil fuels and their planet-warming pollution. But the offshore wind industry is now being battered by a combination of inflation, rising interest rates, and supply chain issues that have made many projects too expensive to build. That could also drive up the price of wind power from those that do start spinning.
It is cool to see it up close.
When we first talked to Hardy at a pilot project back in 2021, he felt the wind was at his company's back.
Are you optimistic about the future of this?
Yeah, very optimistic.
A lot has changed. Ørsted recently canceled 2 giant wind farms off New Jersey and is reconsidering 2 others.
Do you think in some ways it was overly optimistic?
Probably in some ways we were too optimistic on some things, but we didn't expect the big macroeconomic conditions to kind of drag these projects down.
All of these projects were critical to President Biden's goal of 30 gigawatts of offshore wind power by 2030, enough to power more than 10 million homes. Analysts predict the industry will actually install about half that capacity.
We don't believe the Biden administration is going to reach their target, but that's not to say they're going to reach it ever. It's just not they're going to reach it by the 2030 deadline they originally set.
Analyst Timothy Fox is optimistic about the long-term future of offshore wind as the industry constructs its supply chain, including massive ships like this one being built in Louisiana that will service wind turbines. Back at Ørsted, David Hardy believes offshore wind is still the best source of renewable energy for crowded East Coast cities, where it's hard to build wind and solar farms on land.
It's been a bumpy couple of years, but you still have a lot of people who believe in this industry and know that it needs to happen.
For more stories like these and live coverage of breaking news 24/7, stream us right here on CBS News, available across all platforms. Thanks for watching Protecting the Planet. I'm Ben Tracy.